Good.
Okay, so thank you all for joining our webinar this morning. Today's session will be around the confusion in the UK around the A-levels and the GCSEs. Running the session today is Spencer Coles, MPW CEO, Tom Caston, MPW Cambridge Principal, and Simon Fitch, our Academic Director International. So I will hand over to you now, Spencer.
Great. Thanks, Betty, and thanks for joining us. And also welcome to those that do watch this as a recording, which we will be sending out to the wider network. And really the purpose of today was to make sure that we could offer up a session for questions and answers, to talk through the landscape, how we got to the current situation, and then open up some of the options and possibilities that are available to students to navigate their way through, which has been, as is widely overused, but it is an unprecedented year, and there's been no playbook for this in terms of those departments making the decisions within the Department of Education, Ofqual, etc. And clearly they've had their challenges, but then also for the schools, colleges, the students themselves, and our wider agent network in terms of the support that's needed there as things keep shifting or we wait for certain clarifications. So we're going to take you through as a reminder as what has happened over the past few months. Look at some of the solutions through MPW, but really we do encourage some questions. If you've got individual case studies, we'll happily field some questions on that. If there are any more complex ones that people do want to raise, we offer up the service and we will be able to provide some academic guidance and best solution advice. Even if that is very much outside of an MPW solution, we're very happy to support the wider network. So again, huge thanks. Right, let me first of all bring up the screen share. And again, this presentation will be made available to those that are going to follow the recorded version. So as Betty just said, if you keep your microphones muted just until we get to the end. And the presentation for today, the story so far, let's have a look at what the main plan was in terms of the centre assessed grades with moderation. What happened in terms of moving away from that original plan. Results itself, we're going to talk a little bit about the university entry, what's happening now, and I want to invite Simon to give a bit more colour on that. And then collectively, we're going to talk to you about some of the solutions, and then importantly, open up for your questions. So, what was the plan? Fairly soon after lockdown and the school closures, the government did announce that public examinations would be cancelled. And that decision was made in all good faith. I think that the real concern around holding the examinations was, yes, there was health concerns and the potential of increasing transmission. But I think the underlying decision for that was that they couldn't guarantee a fair playing field, knowing that certain students would have good online provision, good supplementary tuition support for those that could afford it, and there would be other students that weren't able to access their education given the school closures, and therefore they would be disadvantaged in the exams. And on that basis, and it's often the basis that Ofqual will make a decision, is if there is going to be a group which is significantly disadvantaged, then they will act. And in this case, acting meant the cancellation of public exams. So in spring, they set out what was the key plan. And the key plan was that we'd have centre assessed grades provided for each of the students from the schools and colleges where they were based. And this was very much articulated and designed to be a teacher-led exercise, and also it was bottom-up. So from the teachers that were working with the students, that knew them best, that had access to all of their results and performance, in-class tests, mock examinations, and a wide range of evidence could be used into establishing that. And ultimately the question was, predict and put forward the most likely grade that that student would have achieved had the exams gone ahead. And it needed to be evidence-based. But as soon as that guidance came out that it would be a teacher-led and a bottom-up exercise, grade inflation was going to be an issue. Naturally, teachers would give the benefit of the doubt, and they would look to award their students, particularly on marginal cases, the higher grade. That's a natural expectation. But that was made eyes wide open in terms of the start of the process, as opposed to they could have gone for a top-down model and actually from the outset said, here is a grade profile which we would like you as the school, the exam centre, to actually fit your cohort into. And that would have been a top-down process, and by the nature of it would have managed grade inflation concerns from the outset. Given that we went with the teacher-led and the bottom-up approach, a tool was requested as part of the submission, and what they asked for was the rank order of the students. So that of a class of 20 mathematicians or 20 students taking maths, that they would be ranked within their grade bay. So if we had 10 students that were ranked for an A grade out of the 20, they needed to be ranked because the expectation was that there would be this model of standardization, and that would allow for those that met certain grade boundaries, they would actually be moved and this moderation process take place. And that could only happen if the schools were not only providing the grades, but the rank order within those grades. So that was part of the exercise from all of the MPW schools and the whole sector at large. The much talked algorithm was there designed to then actually take all this data, look at a form of standardization and moderation to keep grade inflation in check and within the bounds of historical norms, and that was the model that was proposed. There was at this stage on Plan A a safety net, and any students who weren't happy with the grade they were awarded had a safety net of the autumn exam series. And for A levels, they were set for October, and for GCSEs for November. So that was Plan A, and that's how the model was holding together. In terms of what happened from there, A-level results, as you know, come out on the second week of August, fell on the 13th of August this year, and clearly there was a lot of concern in terms of just the level of moderation that had taken place. And I think, you know, in all fairness, the sector were expecting this level of moderation because of the genus of the process, that this would be bottom-up, teacher-led, naturally pushing some inflation into the grades this year. So it wasn't unexpected. The issue really is that the algorithm couldn't take in the individual circumstances, could deal with it on a macro level, could manage grade inflation quite easy, easy to move some metrics around. But it wasn't able to look at individuals, it wasn't able to look at improving the schools, it wasn't able to decipher high achievers in lower rank settings. And that's really the sort of stories that you might have seen on the British news, and certainly we were very aware of with some of our own students, but also in the sector at large. And that was the real concern. And there was a disproportionate number of students in certain settings that were affected by the algorithm. And to my earlier point, that's really what drove Ofqual to act. When they could see that actually, once this was run through, that there was a subset which were disadvantaged through this model, they had to make changes. We saw many students didn't get their first choice universities, and some fairly tough stories in the media. So initially, on the 15th of August, option B came to the table, and option B was really the consideration that students can now bring to the table their mock examination. So if they had a better mock examination than their awarded grade, they would be able to use that as part of an appeals process. And a statement came out that students would not have an awarded grade lower than their mock examination. And so that was, an introduction of a new safety net. The issue with that really was that mock examinations across the country are very different in different settings. So it's not a standardized set of examinations. And also the timing of that differs greatly across different schools. Some will run a series of 3 mock examinations, some before Christmas, afterwards, and then into March. Others will have actually just one set of very structured mock examinations. There were schools in the sector which were really concerned because they hadn't actually completed their mocks before lockdown. So whilst a potentially innovative and a good solution, the reality was that it was going to create more issues and probably not address the disparity that Ofqual needed to. So pretty quickly, the guidance around that was withdrawn, and we moved to option C. And on the 17th of August, it was confirmed that students would be awarded either their centre assessed grades, so the teacher-led grades that were originally submitted, or those grades determined by the algorithm, whichever was higher. And so that's the position that which we finished on. And I think there was a number in the sector that were able to predict that that would be the outcome, and it would have been beneficial had we got there much sooner, and ideally before the 13th of August, to save a great deal of anguish. Once that had happened, that changed. It was confirmed for both A levels and GCSEs. So fortunately with GCSEs, we were able to issue grades on the 20th of August, which do not need to be changed, that follow that new process, and generally speaking across the sector, a lot happier and easier to move forward. In terms of the A-level grades, they haven't actually fully arrived with the universities until today. So the change was made, but Ofqual instructed the examination boards to get the A-level grades amended and through to universities as soon as possible. But that's really going to happen today. And so in terms of what that means for university entry, and I'm sure a number of colleagues have had similar type events, webinars, Q&A, material coming out from our colleagues in the higher education space. The issues, for them have, been as significant as with the schools. And I would say that this last set of changes do move some of the onus further down the line. So universities have, been running clearing from the 13th of August, having very challenging conversations, and now have obviously got to restart that. And Simon, you've kept a really good handle on this for us. Did you want to take the team and those listening through this slide on university entry?
Absolutely. Thanks, Spencer. So there's a few things, I suppose. So first of all, for those of you who don't know me, I did spend quite a lot of time working in the university sector. I have lots of friends still in the university sector, they've had a very difficult summer. So as many of you will know, the IB results were very problematic and have just been reissued. And now we've got similar or had similar issues with A-level results. So universities have been very under pressure throughout the summer. I think this is not just the last 2 weeks for most colleagues in the university sector. So if you are working with colleagues in the university sector, I think some patience, and we're having to be patient within MPW around working with universities. As Spencer said, clearing as per normal started on the 13th of August when the exam results were when the A-level results were initially distributed. It was a very difficult time. MPW has been, you will work with us, you know that we have a very individualized approach to university placement. We're always very successful in university placement. I mean, this year, for example, 71% of our offers were made by the Russell Group and specialist universities. So we've been working a lot with universities. After all of the changes, then obviously lots of students were rejected by universities having not made their offers. Lots of other students were then accepted by universities having made clearing offers. So as Spencer said, this week, with all of the changes, most universities, and when you speak with universities, most of them have said that they're waiting for the official publication of results. And in a second, I'm just going to share one university's website as of this morning, just to illustrate some of this. During the course of the week, the government has been making announcements around university placement. So they've announced on the 20th of August that those who've missed out on their initial first choice as a result of the problems they faced, but who now have the grades following the results revision, they will be entitled to attend their first choice university either in 2020 or 2021. So there's some obvious challenges around this in terms of space. So universities are faced with asking some students to defer entry, and they are approaching that on a very individual basis. In parallel to this, the government had previously put caps on student numbers in universities. They have been removed. So they've been removed to make it to allow as many students as possible to access their first choice university. We have the added complication of social distancing needing to be in place. So universities are currently working feverishly, I think, just to see what is safe and how many students they can actually take for this year, as opposed to deferrals for next year. Medical schools and veterinary schools and dentistry. So that specifically when the new arrangements were announced, there were no more places. Now the government have removed caps on those numbers temporarily to accommodate as many students in medical schools as possible for 2020. That doesn't mean that every student who is eligible to go to medical school will be able to be accommodated. Some will be deferred. So if I put here that clearing 2, if you like, is underway really as of today. Now, for some universities, they've been working through clearing, and some maybe of universities where there's slightly less competition, certainly today will be confirming students and talking with students. In terms of a university that we send students to, for example, and actually it's my alma mater, so Newcastle University. I'm just going to, hopefully you can see, Spencer, you can see that, yeah?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, so this is what Newcastle have on their website today. So Newcastle have indicated that they'll send us the census assessed grades on the afternoon of, well, yesterday afternoon. Really, the university have received them today, or less. So they're processing the information carefully and will be doing that over the weekend. They're then reopening, I think, a helpline on Monday for all students who held an offer with Newcastle initially to speak with Newcastle about their offer. And they are saying students must call and speak to them. They won't discuss their cases in any other way. And then moving down, there's also medical and dentistry. So here The government, as I have said, has announced the cap on medical school places will be removed. Does this mean Newcastle will be taking more students for 2020 entry? Well, the response as of now, literally now, is when we've received and reviewed the centre assessment grade data, we'll have a better understanding of how this has impacted students. The university has given an undertaking that a place will be offered to any students who now meet our entry requirements, either to start in 20 or 2021. So once again, some students may have to defer. We hope to be able to update on this next week. So that's all today. So as you can see, a very complicated picture, and one that at MPW we are working with students across the board to advise them in these situations. It is now really very much an individual conversation with universities that they originally had firm offers with, and we will do that throughout next week. As you can see, Manchester, which is a university where we have huge numbers of offers, over 100 offers. I looked at Manchester's website just before this, and they've put pretty much the same message as Newcastle up there. So for Russell Group universities, that's where the university sector is. So hopefully that helps. Thanks, Spencer.
Thanks, Simon. Really helpful. And I think that, you know, with all of those changes, we do look at, you know, what that means in terms of implications, and taken us through a number of those. Probably the biggest one that we're all trying to get a handle on is what that also does for 2021 in terms of how competitive will that be? Will some of these caps remain off for 2021 as well? And that's yet to play out. So the university is now right in the firing line, but really in the cut and thrust of that, and I think it's good to conceptually think about clearing starting again as of today. And so clearing 2 underway, I think, is a good message and a good takeaway from the current situation. Now, one of the original safety nets that were put in place with the initial plan was the potential of the autumn resits. You recall we talked about earlier that if students weren't satisfied with the moderated grade, this was really their only opportunity, and this was their safety net, with A-level set for October and GCSE set for November. Tom, I wonder if you could just talk us through the landscape of the autumn resits.
Absolutely. I think just one thing to add from what I've heard so far is just the huge mental pressure that this has put on all the students. Normally these things tend to be tied up within a couple of days every year. We're still hanging on into week 2, and it doesn't look like it's going to be solved immediately anyway. So there's that to add. In terms of the autumn resits, we had over 25 inquiries asking from externals, what are we going to be doing for this resit session? A few of them dropped off once CAGs were adopted, but still high teens. And we put together a 4-week programme from the start of term, 4 hours a week per subject, plus a mock at the end of their time. And the boys and girls will come in. It's also going to be available online. They will come in as visitors. We won't register them, but they will come in, and it will be support tuition, but more formalised. And we're getting some very positive take-up. With the caveat that obviously if they're finding this, that having not been taught since March face-to-face, if it does prove to be too much of an uphill task for them, they can convert to a year, or conversely they can convert to the January-June programme. And even if the resit doesn't go as planned, they can still do that. But what it means is that we're getting them through the door, and we're addressing their learning needs immediately. And it's been very positive. Just this week, we've approached all these inquiries and had some very good feedback. So there's lots of options for these boys and girls who are thinking about resits and who aren't happy with their moderated grade.
Sure. And Tom, do you think, is there any risks around sitting these exams? Will that stay on their record indefinitely? Bigger problems there?
Whatever happens, what they've been awarded now, it can't be taken away if their resit grade is worse. So absolutely no risk. It's a time thing. I think, you know, our advice is always going to be the more time you spend on it, you know, the better the outcomes will be for you. So, you know, the 4-week course is what it is, but ultimately, you know, I would rather have them here for a year educationally.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll come to that. I think in terms of, it's also around how prepared and what students have been doing over the summer. So if this whole situation has taught us anything, is the individual nature of students, their learning experiences, their settings, is, you know, absolutely paramount. And you know, that's something that MPW have built into our model. You know, it's a very tailored education experience. So when we initially looked at the autumn resits, we were very skeptical about, you know, its value in the process, but not, you know, unlinked to your opening comment, Tom, that, you know, this has been a really challenging time for students, a lot of emotional stress. And I think that's why a number are looking towards the autumn resits, because they're looking for a relatively swift response, but also potentially using this as a, you know, as a mock themselves, because they may realistically be thinking that their best opportunity to get the grades that they want for September 21 entry is in the summer sitting. But actually there is this opportunity. There's not any risk around it. If they get the grades they want in the summer sitting of 21, then what they've taken in these autumn resits won't sit on their academic record either. So I think that has a part to play. And so I think as the situation has evolved, we've taken a more holistic, but also, you know, constructive view of what we can do in the autumn resits. And that's why at all preschools we do have these structured programs in place now. And there certainly are students there who have been expecting to utilize the autumn resits, and so have kept industrious throughout the summer and are well prepared. You know, and for them, this could be a good solution. But for students, as you say, that have not been in any structured education since March and haven't necessarily utilized their time fruitfully, then it's going to be a very challenging opportunity.
Agreed. I think, as you say, it's all about the individual, and some will be in good shape for a 4-week course. For some, it'll be too much of a stretch. And as I say, we can respond to whichever.
Yeah, and once they get going as well, I think that's the opportunity then to have another discussion and see how they're feeling about that, and move to an alternative if required. In terms of the alternative, and it's something which has been at the heart of the MPW offering for many decades, is the 1-year A-level retake. So we cover over 40 subjects across the group. The majority are covered at all 3 campuses, all 3 schools. And so there isn't a wider A-level offering out there. And in terms of the experience in delivering quality A-level retake programs, MPW is very much seen as the market leader in the UK. And, you know, we're making good strides to take that established UK brand into the international market. And that's why we continue to talk to our wider network around these programs. So never before has they been as pertinent to the current situation. They are an outstanding set of programs. We've got a lot of experience with that. And what comes from that also is the understanding of how universities will consider retakes. I think there has been a bit of a myth that Russell Group and Oxbridge in particular won't accept retakes, and that's just not the case. We have some of our strongest grades every year coming from our cohort who are retaking, and our highest Russell Group placement is through that cohort. And actually, you know, our Oxbridge candidates are often very well represented by this retake cohort. And I think view of it has changed across the sector, because actually it's seen as a very positive and determined option. Rather than settling for second best or accepting that, those students turn around and say, no, I do have this dream. I know that I am capable of this. I am willing to devote another year to making sure that I've got, the foundations in my education right and solid to move on. Is really very well respected. So I think that concept of retakes being downgraded in the view of universities has long since passed. So any students that are considering the retakes should do so in the knowledge that they're very much supported, and that this is a proactive and positive step forward. Linking to what Tom was saying, the full year course does give us the best opportunity, and the students the best opportunity of success through the time that we have, so that we can work with those students, know exactly where they're coming from, very quickly understand their strengths and weaknesses in their subject, have a look to see if there are actually any gaps in the syllabus that's being covered, particularly this year, given the school closures, so that we can develop a tailored plan. But higher grade improvement is far more likely in a longer duration course. Just simply the amount of time we've got to work with the students, the amount of exam practice, feedback, because as well as going through the content, it's really making sure that students are able to convey their knowledge, understanding, problem-solving techniques in exam conditions, and that does take practice, and that takes time. So we can do an awful lot more in that 1 year program than we can on a shorter sitting. Now we've now got the support model for the autumn resits. We've got a full-blown 1 year retake program, which is the heart of the offering, and we have for many years had a Jan to June option as well. So this is a shorter retake program. The students would, in normal times, have taken a break and then rejoin us in January for an intensive revision session, and that remains open as a potential route. In the same way that students who are unable to join us in September for the 2 year course can actually join us in January for an 18-month version of that program. So the Jan to June, back to the whole question of individual circumstance. It's what subject they've done, it's what exam board they've done, and it's in terms of their preparedness as to whether that is a viable option for students. So all we can say around that is, if you've got these case studies, if you've got families that are unsure what the next steps are, is get in touch. You know the way in which we work. It's a very collaborative experience with very much valued partners and agents across the world. So do get in touch. Let's have a look at the case. We can work out solutions together using the variety of A-level retake and resit options we've got in front of us. Alongside that are university foundation courses, and there are a whole variety, and we know that you'll be working with universities themselves that offer this as a route. There are also the larger providers of university foundation programs, pathways as they like to call them, and that would be into study group, dedicated programs in dedicated centres. And from the outset, MPW has always positioned our foundation courses as being different in the fact that it's delivered within inside a school setting. And we think that there are students that are not ready for a full-blown university environment that benefit from the pastoral care, the support, the preparation, and that school environment, so that they can make sure that once they get to university, they can be truly successful. I think that that's what we always look at on this. And when we're giving advice as to whether it's a foundation course that's right for them, or actually a 2-year A-level program because of the requirement to make sure they are ready. And we look at, it's not about just getting them to university, it's about making sure that when they're there, they will be successful. And I think that the foundation courses that we offer within the school really do meet that threshold. And so there is a difference between studying foundation course at a dedicated centre or within the university compared to the school environment. In terms of the portfolio, I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but the University of London programme is delivered at MPW London. It's a very robust programme. It is intensive. It has excellent progression routes. It is good for those that are keen on the quants, statistics, that are looking for economics, and that are, numerically astute in terms of their learning, and that aspire in that area. So again, not all foundation programs are equal, and in our experience, we're able to really look at the profile of the students and advise which is going to be the most appropriate program. So that's the University of London programme. There's plenty more guidance and advice that we can provide on that and details around that. The NC UK Foundation programme, we have been running now for 5 years, must be 5 years. I'm sure Betty will correct me if I'm wrong. And we started this off at MPW Birmingham, and it's now available at MPW Cambridge. And I have to say that the recruitment this year has been really strong, and we're getting close to capacity on these courses. So bodes well for the nature of the courses, their flexibility, the variety of pathways that we're actually able to offer. Business routes, there are science routes, there are engineering routes, and it's a really well considered structure. It has the built-in English component for those that are requiring that, and it also has, by the nature of the NC UK network, a guaranteed progression to their key partners. And again, we need to look at the individual story, see what their aspirations are, which of the partners they're looking to go to, which academic route they wish to study, as to what that guarantee looks like. But it's a great network, and it's growing. For all three of these routes, and I'll come to the third in a moment, they have been designed as a 1-year program. So that in itself brings together opportunities and suitability for this current scenario. But we would always advise that don't try and get students to start this too early. So if they are 16, and they would be allowed onto this program, is it right that actually at the age of 17 that they're prepped and ready to go to university? Really do consider the benefits for those younger students at 16 of doing a traditional 2-year A-level program, because there's a lot of maturity that needs to come forward there. But as 1-year programs, all of the foundation courses are going to be in high demand this year. The third route is the MPW University Foundation Programme, a set of routes designed with our parent company, Kaplan International, underpinned by excellent university partners. This has a flexible entry for both September and January, and covers, again, a range of academic routes open. And I think is probably one of the options for us where we can actually, in the first academic period, September to December, assist those students where English language and studying in a new way is going to be more of a challenge. And that gives us an opportunity to bring their key skills up, so that when they are running from January to June on the, a lot more of the subject content and preparing for exams, we've had a good opportunity to make sure their key skill sets are there. So one of the more flexible options. So that's the foundation courses. And in terms of key points on them, I think most of that I've covered. In terms of the MPW way, the school environment, they have a personal tutor, it's small class sizes, there's the university progression and support that we provide our A-level students, of course, is extended to this group. And these programs are tailored for the international community. So English language is there, and we have the accommodation and support through our KSS, but that's for all programs. So I think there are certain students that actually feel comfortable in a more of an international only cohort, and the foundation courses will certainly provide that inside the wider school. Again, individual circumstances need to be taken into consideration, and let's work on the case studies together and make sure that we provide the best guidance and find the best route for students to be successful. I certainly feel like I've talked enough. So Betty, can I hand over to you to
yes,
look at some moderation and get some questions? And if you don't have people naturally putting their hands up to answer those questions, feel free to allocate them. But look, thank you for listening to my presentation on that. I hope it sort of like set the scene and resonates. Love to hear some of your questions.
Thank you, Spencer. So we have a question from Jackie, who says, is MPW in a position to support IB students in preparation for retakes, even perhaps online?
I'll start off, and again, Simon, you've got plenty of experience with the IB, and Tom wider too. We don't teach the international baccalaureate curriculum here. So there will be no structured courses for those wanting to do a retake in the IB. Generally speaking, when students don't have the international baccalaureate qualifications, GPA that they're looking for their onward journey, they'll come and have a discussion. And we'll actually try and unpick that and look at why it is that that's happened. And often it's because the students are trying to maintain a GPA across a breadth of subjects, and they will be either, and this is quite generalist, but often they'll find themselves that they're either struggling in the sciences or the humanities. And so the natural conversation for us to have at that time is the one-year A-level program gives you an opportunity to focus on your strengths, be that sciences or humanities, and actually then focusing on that and looking at doing 3 subjects which are right in your sweet spot, and looking to get your AA stars in those subjects is probably going to be a more constructive route than re-going over the IB and having to spend quite a lot of time focusing and preparing on your weaknesses to lift that GPA up. So that's a natural conversation we have. Now, all 3 schools have a depth of expert tutors that are used to tailoring their tuition between different exam boards, A-levels, GCSEs, etc. So students that are looking for specific support in mathematics, biology, chemistry, they should get in touch and have a conversation. And in the same way that Tom is, bringing together a tailored solution for students to sit the autumn series exams, we can look at providing personalised tuition services for those students that just need subject support. Tom, anything to add to that?
Yes, in my past life as a geography teacher in a school that did A-levels and IB, I never taught the IB, but would often tutor the IB boys and girls because I could, because it's still geography and it was still a topic. The philosophy of learning is a little bit different, but not totally alien. I mean, it's a lovely one. So as I said, there are conversations to be had, and I certainly wouldn't discount our ability to contribute something quite compelling to an IB student but equally there's the A-level option as well in a year.
And just to follow on from that, having come from an IB school earlier this year, it's a fantastic qualification for many students, but for some students it is just too much. And Tom and I were talking about this earlier. You know, from our perspective, the science would have been a huge challenge. And so every year we will see students who performed fairly well, but then the rest of the program has taken them down. And every year we will help them on the subjects that really they want to take moving forward, and the subjects that they're best placed to take, and the subjects that will get them into a very high quality university. So yeah, we're very well placed for that, I think.
Great, thank you very much. We have a question from Camelia who says, regarding the quarantine period requested at the moment, how do you manage this for international students?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start, and Simon, you've been working closely with Chris on some of this as well. So KSS is a wholly owned subsidiary and manages the student accommodation for all three settings. And the team have been working throughout the summer to provide solutions not only for quarantine purposes, but student accommodation in general, in terms of how they spend their time with us. So on arrival, students will actually be given a COVID test. It's nothing they have to pay for. NPW and KSS will actually be picking up the cost of that. And what that enables us to do is, on arrival, they will actually be restricted to their room in the accommodation setting. The test will be taken immediately. We have those in stock, and we are expecting to get the results back within 24 hours. Due to certain postal or other arrangements, sometimes it may go a little longer than that, but certainly within 36 hours. And so we are able, on a clear test, to then allow that student to join the wider house group. And so they can then move freely and access the wider halls of residence which they're based. They just need to be in their room for the first 24 hours, and we're going to provide them with services and support while they settle down. And that then gives them free access. And the reason we've done it that way is because with flight difficulties and late decisions being made, students are coming at various intervals to join us. Students are not all arriving in one go. And so we're having to use this test methodology, test and then join the community, and support there. So once they then have access to the wider halls of residence and the social spaces and so on, it's a pretty open situation, and students will be supported with groceries, meals and other whilst they complete their quarantine period. Now, all have excellent access to IT, the internet, and so students will be able to join their classes immediately on arrival. So as soon as the classes are up and running, students are getting access to the classes, and they'll join those online with the classmates that they will have in the small group settings, right up until they can then actually join in person, face to face. And that's the process that we'll follow. Anything further to add, Simon, that I've missed around the basics of that?
So what I've done in the chat, I've just put a link to our Ready to Go website. So the Ready to Go web microsite that we've set up has a lot of information about social distancing, about health and well-being, about every aspect of what our arrangements are for the autumn term in both our colleges and the KSS halls of residence. So I would encourage you, and from a parental point of view, these are the questions as a parent I would be asking. And so I would encourage you to speak with your families and just and run through that microsite, which we are continuing to add to. There'll be more content on it next week as well. But that really does talk about how our online and our in-person learning and also the KSS arrangements will be operating for this term. So I would recommend that to you as well.
Great, thank you, Simon. Theo, did you want to unmute and ask your question? Or I can ask.
Okay. So, because I realize that there are many students who are considering studying dentistry in Spain, where the entry requirements are a little bit more relaxed than in the UK. So, if a student who didn't achieve the AA stars, B grades this session, they'd like to consider studying the 1 year A level, doing biology and chemistry, and a third subject. Is it possible to benefit of the 1 year A level program if one of the sciences haven't been studied before in the 2 years program?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So, what would be the subject they haven't usually covered?
I do not know all the details. I know that one of the sciences, I do not know if it's biology or chemistry, wasn't a subject in A level.
Sure.
I receive more details next week.
Yeah. Again, the 1 year program we have experience of doing as a retake, where students have studied the syllabus before. But we also have students who will do an accelerated 1 year program, having not studied A levels before. And again, we've just talked about how we can actually migrate students from an IB program, but also a whole range of other international qualifications. And it will really depend how much they did in their earlier part of their secondary education around that subject. And what we usually do is do a diagnostics test. Let's just actually see what their understanding is, how much ground we've got to cover. And again, it'll be down to the capability and aptitude of that student, and an assessment needs to be made whether that student is capable of taking on that much study, is going to work independently, is going to be proactive through it. But it happens, yeah, very much so. We actually have a mature medics program. So we have students that go to do their A levels, often go to university, maybe do an engineering program, and then realize that actually their calling is medicine. And they haven't done chemistry or biology, and need to go back and do that. And we probably see in London 20 students each year do that. In Cambridge, there's certainly a handful of students that will do that, and similarly in Birmingham. So very well experienced at doing that, and that will be delivering either a chemistry or biology A level from scratch in 1 year. We know that those students are dedicated. They're making a massive, sacrifice in terms of the degree that they've studied. They're now changing track, and they're experienced and so on. So it's those sort of judgments that we need to make as to whether that's any individual student can really do an A level from scratch. But in that case, alongside 2 other A levels that they have studied the content of. So it's possible. Let's have a look at the details. Let's have the conversations, and we'll take it from there.
This is what I needed, just to know that it's possible, because with my older students already gained the success in their program. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Camelia says, do you still receive applications for the GCSE program this year? So Camelia, yes, we are still open for applications for all of our programs across all of our colleges for September 2020. And for January 2021 intake, yes, we will be running a majority of our courses. I'm going to put the international email address in the box. So do send us an email, Camelia, with your requests. And we do have your email address. So someone after this webinar will contact you if you wish to make an application for MPW this year or for January 2021. Do we have any other questions? Leanne, you've been very quiet. I'll pick on you.
Thank you for picking on me, Betty, but everything is fine.
Sorry.
That's fine. Everything is fine. I just just actually joined this this conversation just to be updated on what's going on, and so we don't really have any pressing issues at the moment, and the cases that we have, we're dealing with Felicity, and everything is fine. So happy agent, everything's fine.
Good.
That's great.
That's what we like to hear.
Excellent.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, it's certainly been it's been a challenging time. There's lots of new things that have come into the mix this year. And as I started off saying, that there's no established playbook for this. And so all I would say is that we're here to work things through with you. MPW is a solutions provider. That's always been our position and our niche in the education market, and we will continue to do so. We'll be creative. We'll be realistic though too, in terms of those solutions. Ultimately, we want to put something in front of a student which is a really valuable option. They've got every chance of success. And I know it's been covered on in other sessions, and many of you are aware, but just the quality of program that we were able to put together through lockdown doesn't diminish in its importance. We all want to get back to face-to-face. We're delighted that so many of our returning students are coming back and are looking forward to that. We are well prepared with our general model of very small class sizes. We don't have full school assemblies to worry about and things like that. So we can refine our model to be, socially distanced and COVID aware without losing the essence of it pretty well. But we don't know how, the year will unfold. Later in the winter, there may be a spike here, elsewhere, that we need to be mindful of. And so that online model, that robust continuity of education we worked hard at throughout the summer term, was just so well received. And I think that students should book with confidence and register with MPW, knowing that that solutions provider can adapt to the different circumstances. We hope that we don't have to enact that again, but I think we all have to accept that it's a different landscape, and that may come forward. So a lot of the students I know that Tom's been seeing in the interview room didn't have that same experience during the summer term, and were disappointed in terms of the provision that was in place, and that certainly has led them to register with MPW, so that if things take a turn for the worse, that they've got a good level of education going forward.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Tio, are you happy? Leanne, you're happy? Do we have anyone else for questions?
I'm really happy, and just want to say thank you and congratulations for the results. Been some wonderful surprises from my former students, so just thank you.
Brilliant, great to hear that. Thanks, Tio.
Thank you. So I think we've come to the end of our session. Did Tom, Simon, Spencer, did you want to say anything further?
Not at all. No, huge thanks to continued support, and wish everyone well. So thanks very much, and I'll sign off. All the best.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.